Decision Diaries with Lynn and Jamie.
Welcome to Decision Diaries. Today we are going to talk about deciding to be a stay-at-home mom. And when I say a stay-at-home mom, I am talking about leaving your full-time employment as a woman, leaving your full-time employment.
Well, men leave their full-time employment too, Lynn.
I know. And I was going to mention that.
So how about this? Just becoming a
start over.
parent and deciding to leave or alter your full-time career to care for your children.
All right.
How's
You
that?
want to start over?
No, I think we should keep. I think this is who we are, right? We've got right and left coming together and being moderate. So I think that's part of the conversation. I'm gonna politically correct your ass.
Oh my God. We have got to start over.
No, we do not.
I was going to get there.
I say we go.
You didn't give me a chance.
All right, whatever. I think that was a good intro, and I think we should keep it because it is who we are.
All right, that's fine.
All right, good. I win one for a change. All right. Anyway, yeah. So I'll let you go back. So yes,
all right,
altering your career. Go ahead. You're welcome. Go.
You got the giggles now.
All right. Well, since Lynn can't get it together, I'm going to move forward.
Go ahead. Political correctness. Go ahead.
When you decide to have a child, right? That's a decision in and of itself. And then you have a decision of, who is going to care for that child, because the reality is up until they're in kindergarten, you gotta figure out what you're doing. And, even when they go into kindergarten. So, Lynn, you said you had some great stuff to share. Let's talk about your decision to stay home, and then we'll talk about what I decided to do. So, Lynn, tell me about it. Did you always know you wanted to be a stay-at-home mom?
So, I think I mentioned in another episode that when my husband and I were on our first date, our blind date, we actually had that conversation. And so I think I had decided a long time ago that I wanted to stay at home with my kids because I was raised by a stay-at-home mom. So that's also why I felt a lot of pressure that, like, right out of college, I really need to get up to a level in my career, because I knew at some point I was going to press what I call the pause button. And so my husband and I had that conversation on our first date. Didn't know I was going to marry him. Married him. And then, we decided to have children, had a child. Interesting. Baby's born, husband's unemployed. Lynn still is going to be a stay-at-home mom.
I love that about you.
I don't tend to budge on some of my decisions.
No,
and
you
so,
do not.
that was really pressure on pressure. And, we didn't tell a lot of people that he had lost his job. We just told people that Lynn was going to quit hers. And I will tell you that my coworkers in the office, which I've mentioned before, were mainly older men, because I was in an industry where most of the software salespeople were mainly men, and I was sort of one of the first female to have one of those positions. They were placing bets that I couldn't do it. They're like, there's no way she's going to do it. They didn't even know about my husband's employment, but they still were like, you enjoy working so much. We don't think it's possible. And even my boss, when I told her ahead of time and trained my replacement, she was like, I'm with the guys. We all think that you can't make it. What about you, Jamie?
So interestingly, I had the same conversation with my my ex-husband when we were courting, and I really wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. So unlike you, my parents divorced when I was 1, and I was in daycare from the time that I can remember. And so I always wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And when I married my ex-husband, he made it very clear to me that he was looking for a partner who was going to pull their weight around the house, and that did not look like stay at home. And I had to pause about that before I married him, because I'm like, wait, this is something I've always wanted. And ultimately I decided that I loved him more than the idea of staying home, even though that's what I really wanted. And I have to say that I found a compromise in that. So do you want me to finish, how that went, or do you want to go back?
No, talk about your compromise, and we'll
Okay.
get back to
So,
kind of some things that happened.
all right. So what happened for me was I was a buyer for Steinmart, and it required a lot of traveling. I don't know if you remember, but I was going to New York about 1 week a month and some other little trips, and I was not wanting to do that with a young child. So when I was pregnant with Will, I went to my manager, and they actually agreed to move me to a position that would get me out of traveling, but it would keep my salary. But it was going to go from being a buyer to being a merchandise planner, which is not my personality at all. But I did leave Steinmart with every intention of going back. I really didn't think I was going to not do it. But I will say I had gotten my real estate license while I was pregnant. And I know I had a lot of fear about going into real estate, but the only reason that I did it while I was pregnant was that I traveled so much that I couldn't do it. And this was before you had online classes, you had to go in person. So it was a good opportunity. I'm not traveling. My dad's been egging me to get it. He's like, I think you'd be really good at it. So anyway, I brought Will. They were about 7 weeks old, and I brought them to Steinmart because everybody would have their babies, and then while they were on maternity leave, they would bring the baby back for everybody to ooh and ah. And I went to work, and there was nothing exciting or happy about me going back. I was like so depressed. And so I went to my ex-husband, and I was just like, I don't want to go back. But what we ended up doing is we had bought our first house when the interest rates were like the 8%. So we refinanced our house because the interest rates had dropped. We looked at our spending, and we realized that we were going out for like majority of the meals. So we added up how much money were we really like wasting. And then serendipitously, a friend of mine was having, I think, a shower. I don't know. I don't remember what it was. But my friend Rachel, you remember my friend Rachel? She was one of my best friends. And so her mom at the time had started a business selling sex toys. And
That's right.
she said, if you ever want to work for me, you can come and work for me. And so I kind of had that in the back of my head. And I knew that I didn't want to go back to Steinmart. So I started interviewing real estate companies. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'm going to go into real estate. And my ex-husband and I traveled to his home back in South Florida for the weekend. And his best friend at the time was working for a company that was selling CD and DVD video duplication and replication. Remember back in the day when you get like a
Oh yeah,
DVD
I
or a
remember
CD,
that. Yeah.
like a gift with purchase, and they were everywhere. And so he was the vice president of this company, and he's like, "Do you want a job?" So it really sort of the path unfolded. And so so I didn't end up going into real estate at the time. I put that on pause because it really made me a little nervous, like the idea of being in a commission. Although I ended up in commission sales.
Right. Isn't that funny
So
how, yeah, you end
yeah.
up.
So I at one point was working 3 jobs just to be able to stay home with Will. So I was selling during the day, I was selling CDs and DVDs and video duplication and replication. I was like literally cold calling on Will's naps. I was selling sex toys at night. And then on Sundays, I was teaching Sunday school.
Well, I think it's really important we talk about what you just walk through. Is there's a lot leading up to this is what you think you want to do, and then you have to execute on that, which is being prepared to lose an income So your finances, you really have to look at your finances. And, since we knew this kind of in advance, and I think, I used to think secretly that my husband kind of hoped we wouldn't. I would change my mind. I think there were so many
Mhm.
people betting that I would change my mind. And I'm just, I was very, very career focused. I had no domestic qualities. I really didn't even like children, honestly. I think my husband was a little concerned. Like, I hope she bonds with this child. I didn't play with babies. I didn't babysit a lot. I was just really into my career. Um, so anyway, so when we go to look for a house, they were trying to push us into, a $400,000 house, but I was like, no, we need to qualify on one income. So we made that good choice. We fixed up our house with all cash. That was another really, really good choice. But as you mentioned before, stay-at-home moms, we got to get creative. And I did get creative. I will tell you, I will tell you a little later in this episode some of the creative things I did once I tell you how I got to those creative things. But when I went back into the office, like I said, there's a bet on my head. I go back with my child. Like you mentioned, this was like something you had to do. Like, your coworkers wanted to see you while you were on maternity leave and kind of wanted to see, like, what's your world like, or they like to see that change in you, if you want to call it that. And the first thing everyone looked at me was like, well, she's holding the baby. That's a good sign. So, because I was very businessy, but I think
Uh-huh.
the hardest thing for me when I actually executed on leaving my job was going to a woman who I really admired, because she was the chief technology officer, as I mentioned, in a very male dominated industry. So she was the first female CTO, I think the last female CTO I ever worked for. And to walk in that office and tell her, I'm going to put my career on pause, and not feel like she was going to say to me, "Are you kidding me? I've invested in you. I've mentored you. I want you to be a chief technology officer." She was starting to send me to classes before I found out I was pregnant to get some other certifications. So I really kind of felt like I was about to really disappoint her, but that's not how that went down. Instead, when I walked in and I said, "Look, I know I have a ways to go on my pregnancy, but I want to be very upfront that I plan on quitting. And I also know that you can deny me my maternity leave by me telling you so early." And she said she would never in a million years do that.
Oh, wow.
But I said, I admire you so much. I want to be able to train my replacement so there's no gap in, what I've accomplished. And she admired me for saying that. And then the last thing she said to me is, "You're making the right choice." And that
Wow.
was so shocking to me because, here is someone, who really, fought that battle. And she said, you know, "I look back and you only get one time to be with your child." And she said, when at the time when she gave birth to her son, she had to get back on a private jet with a CEO, at a company like a week later. I mean, she didn't even take her maternity leave because she felt like everybody was kind of gunning for her job and she didn't feel like it was secure. And so, that was great. And then she said, now, she says this to me, but she says, "You also need to know yourself and you
Mhm.
really enjoy working." And she said, "So you're going to have a moment that you need to be aware of any signs of depression, and you need to keep your mind active. And if I can, I will look for consulting opportunities for you to help out the company, here and there." And all of that, I just walked out of there just like, gosh, that was the best experience I could have hoped for. So
That's
great
That's
there.
amazing. That's a totally opposite of what happened with me at Steinmart because there was another woman who was also pregnant. We were due around the same time and we wanted to job share. So we actually thought best of both worlds. We work part-time. We get to be part-time moms, part-time, in our company. We didn't need benefits. Both of us had benefits through our spouses, and we approached Steinmart and said, "Hey, we'd like to job share," and they told us no. So,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
and I'm sure that the world has changed quite a bit from when we were having kids. But, one of the whys with my company is I really discovered the motherhood penalty. And, maybe we need to do an episode on that. But, women who or men, if they choose to to get off the career ladder to have children, you are penalized. You're penalized, because you now have a gap in your resume, unless maybe hopefully the world has changed. But another thing that you don't think about was, you're now not contributing to a 401k and all of the things that you're able to do. And, that's why when I ended up getting divorced, although I got half of the 401, the assets are divided, I'm at a much lower income level than my ex-husband, even if we're both funding at 10%, if I'm making 50,000 and he's making 200,000, there's a gap, and and nothing explains that. So, I mean, it's a decision that you have to think about in the moment that you're in, but you also need to weigh the long-term consequences of that choice. And I have to say, if I had to do all over again, I would make the same choice. I don't regret altering my career to be home to raise my kids. I just wish that we had discussed what that looked like in a way that I was more prepared for it.
Well, I will tell you that I don't know if you saw, I think it was a Modern Family episode where she ran into her old coworker, and her old coworker was now like a chief vice president. Where she decided to stay at home, and then her coworker was a chief
Yes, I
vice
did see that one.
president. I will say that there were some women in the office and some women in technology that stayed throughout, that I have met since I have returned back to work. And yeah, they're at the tippy top, and I
Mhm,
had to start back from scratch again when I went back
mhm.
to work, and work my way up back to where I am now. And I knew that's what I was going to have to do. Now
Yeah,
the finances are interesting, but what also we need to talk about is, wow, for someone like me, I will tell you, I need people, I need an office, I need to activate my brain. And so I was home with my son. After you do the little coworker thing and they all go back to their lives, and now you're kind of in your own life. I had a few moments, Jamie, where I was at home, with basically what I call a sack of potatoes. I'm not a big baby person, and so I'm home with a baby that can't talk to me. And by the way, my
is
son talks a lot because I think I was just talking to the sack of potatoes like
I
constantly just to
I
entertain
think
myself.
I also recall a certain visit to you. I don't know if you remember this, but remember we just said we were gonna be candid. So I walk into your bedroom. I had lent
Oh,
you the bassinet,
are
and
we really?
and
No.
I discover a vibrator in my bassinet, and I'm like, "Lynn, you can keep it.
That was
I don't need
that was a
the
back
bassinet back."
massager. That was a back
Okay.
massager.
Okay, but you were clearly, not enjoying being home. But as
Well,
I
yeah,
recall, you became, like, the president of the moms club, where then there was
well,
more
we're
drama
about to get
there.
there. Yeah, we're
Okay,
about to
let's
get there.
go.
So let's talk about that. So I'm at home. I am bored. I changed my back massager
In
into
between the
into
back
doing other
massager.
things, right? I mean, my son took a nap, so back massager was good during the nap time. So since you brought it up, right? But what also was interesting is, husband goes off to work. He gets to be with people. I'm at home with a sack of potatoes. But then
And
also
a back
something,
massager.
and a back massager. That was nap time, Jamie. Not when my, sack of potato child was around. But the other thing is that all of a sudden, as he goes away to work and my neighborhood empties out because there wasn't a lot of stay-at-home moms like in my neighborhood that I knew. There wasn't like any other woman in my neighborhood that I could just walk next door and have someone to visit with. All of a sudden I had this random fear, like, what if I hit my head and my 6 week old, my 3 week old, like no one finds me till 6 o'clock and something happens to my 3 week old child. All of a sudden I was like, I need a phone network. Like I need somebody that can come over here and make sure that I'm okay. And then the other thing was like 4 weeks in, oh my God, I was coming out of my skin. At that point, I would notice every dust ball in my house. All the laundry was caught up. I found myself pacing the floor, waiting till like 5:30 until my husband came home. And then when he came home, because he was in sales, he was really not interested in talking because he'd been talking to people all day. And I just attacked him. I even tried to talk to my post office guy. My When he delivered the mail, I like opened the door with my child, like, hey, hello. I mean, I probably haven't met you before, but I'm Lynn. And I was like, oh my God, I got to do something. And so that's when my husband's like, you got to do something. And I found the Stay at Home Moms Club, which it's called the Moms Club, and they were based out of California. And I found the group, and I couldn't wait to go to the first general meeting because I was like, I need people. I'm really almost starting to get concerned. And you were available, but you were also very busy. And
I
then
started
your
working. I started working when Will was 7 weeks old. Now I was working from home, and I would literally work in between naps. Or and my ex-husband at the time was a college professor, so we sort of tag teamed. So Will, didn't go to daycare until 18 months, and then that was only like 2 days a week for 9 to noon, and then 3 days a week 9 to noon. So I mean, I worked around being a mom. I mean, but yes, I when I wasn't with Will, I was working, and our oldest, were a year apart, so they were completely different places.
Yeah, and what I really needed was, I was doing this. The agreement with my husband is I was doing this 5 days a week from 8 in the morning. He was working till like West Coast hours. So from 8 to 6, I was completely on my own, all alone. And then the other deal that we had was, my husband needed to sleep so he could actually perform at his job. And so I was the one that was up all night during the day because I got that precious nap time with my back massager. So, so, my husband kind of felt like, you get some nap time. So I was like, okay, it was a deal. I mean, we went full 1950s. Like I did the grocery shopping, I did the cooking. When he came home, he had a meal, a very low budget meal, but he had a meal waiting for him. And frankly, he had a meal waiting for him because I was so bored. So I joined the Moms
Now,
Club.
were
I
you
go to the
also wait, were you
Yeah.
also dressed up in the dress and the pearls? Like you said, full
One time,
1950s.
Jamie, one time I did it just for fun. So I was so bored that he would actually come home and I would be like, it's Cinco de Mayo, tonight's taco night. And I'd have like a sombrero. I mean, seriously, bored, bored, bored. So the Moms Club, I go to the general meeting. I go with another friend of mine. And the first thing they say is, you need to get assigned to a play group so that you can meet with some other moms, stay at home moms during the day. And, the Moms Club consisted of some people who were doctors that left being a doctor, nurses, lawyers, lots of people who were doing that pause, and they were all in. They were like, I'm all in. My husband is off, and we did. And this is what I wanted to bring up. We did when I later on became president of the Mom Club. We'll talk about that. But when I was president of the Moms Club, a man came and asked if he could join our club, and I said absolutely. And so we did have some stay-at-home men join our club because everyone needs that support. So I joined the Moms Club, and I don't sign up for one play group. I sign up for two. I'm like, come on, people. I don't want to be home. So when I sign up for these play groups, and I'm still friends with all those moms, just went to London with one of them. Um, it was great because there were boys, some people had sons, some people had daughters, so it was a nice mix. They were within your age group. And the funniest thing was the Moms Club had this calendar where they met at certain playgrounds. And I was so bored that I put my child, I think Sean was 7 weeks old. I strapped him to me, a baby Bjorn, and I went to the playground just to talk to people. And one of the moms came up to me and she had two children. She had one, that also was strapped to her chest, but then she had some 2-year-old running around the playground. And she's like, "Where's your 2-year-old?" And I'm like, "No, it's just my 6-week old. If I stay home another day, I think I'm going to come out of my skin." So I joined the Moms Club. Husband's extremely happy. He is like, go to playgrounds, go to play group. My play groups, because I was a member of two of them, they were keeping me somewhat busy. But then the Moms Club calendar was somewhat busy. But on those days that I didn't have anything, I was like, well, I'm on my own and I should take advantage of this. Like, maybe I'll just go down to the beach and wear my child. Maybe I'll wear my child as like an accessory and like walk around. Plus, I did have some baby weight to lose. So I would stroll a lot. And then my husband was like, the Moms Club is not going to turn into a corporation, is it? And he goes, "You're not gonna feel compelled." And I was like, "No, no, I'm just volunteering and I'm just running a couple of play groups." And then, of course, as we know, by the end of my first year, I am president of the Moms Club. And now I'm running it like a corporation. Our newsletter goes from like 2 pages to like 6 pages with advertising. But then also I use the Moms Club as a way of, Jamie, one of the things that I can tell you now, super jealous of you, is that you could afford Gymboree and you could afford those little music classes for your kids.
Mhm,
But
mhm,
because I couldn't, I used the
mhm.
Moms Club to go in and negotiate. And I would go in and I'd go to Gymboree and I'd be like, we have some moms that may be interested in Gymboree, and our chapter is about 75 moms. So if you just charge us $2, uh, you may get a lot more
Uh-huh,
business. And so we'd
uh-huh.
have a Moms Club day, and I would only pay $2. Of course, Sean hated Gymboree, hated that clown. All he did was look at himself in the mirror. He never did any of the fun Gymboree things. But
Uh-huh.
that's how we did karate. We did gym. We got some discounts at the
You're so
zoo.
creative. I love your creativity. It is just it
It's
is
desperation.
no, I mean, well, they say that, that necessity is the mother of invention, right? And,
Yeah.
I wish that I had not had to work. I mean, I guess I felt like I had to, because it was the deal that I made, right? I just like you said to Bruce, I'm not, and I was told, from the beginning, like, I want a partner who's gonna work. So, I would have liked to have had
Let's
the
talk about the
choice.
creative part. The Moms Club also got approached with some opportunities. In addition to reducing the cost of being able to do Gymboree and karate and gyms and zoos, we were actually approached by companies that wanted our thoughts,
That's
because
awesome.
we're moms and we're purchasers and consumers. and
Sure.
and of course, like I mentioned, we also had a couple of men in the group. So they were the purchasers. They were running their households. So TG Lee came to us and wanted
Hey, I
us
don't
to
think
like
I don't
scoop
think
some ice
anyone is
cream.
is gonna really care, honestly. I
Yeah,
think we need
no,
to
but
we need to
I
bring it back
let me
in
tell
and
you
just
well,
okay.
let me tell you a funny one. To earn $500, Jamie, uh, cash, $500 cash, which was good. Like, we
Yeah.
talk about you want to contribute. I didn't want Bruce to feel all the pressure on the finances. I did want to contribute. and we did need extra money, and so I had to be creative. And so there was a gum chewing research thing. I chewed gum for 5 days for $500, and I have not chewed gum since.
That's
There
so
was another time I had to look at soup labels, and I starved myself before going to this soup thing. We had my friend Jennifer and I would look at the soup. We left our kids in the car, and she would be in the car with air running all with 4 boys in the car locked into a minivan. And then I would run in, I would look at the soup, and then she would run in and she'd look at the soup so we both could earn $100.
so okay. So what would you
I mean,
tell some
creativity, right?
yeah, what would you tell somebody who is trying to decide whether they should stay at home?
Well, let me tell you this. Staying at home or being a working mom, nobody wins. I mean, I feel like nobody wins
I
because I
agree.
kinda have done a half and half. Now, I enjoy that corporations have become more flexible. I've enjoyed, kind of seeing how things have evolved and you can get more creative. But on the other hand, multitasking is not a real thing. It's really hard to chase a child around and work a full-time job if you're like within the same hours, as I want to say, like
Mhm,
there's a kid wake time where you really can't get anything done when your kids
mhm,
are younger.
mhm.
Um, and with care.com, I think it's a little easier to find more care. I felt like looking for care was also seems very daunting. So I think you have to ask yourself, what are you willing to give up? Um, are you willing to give up finances, your career? It is kind of a temporary situation, I want to say.
Mhm, mhm,
And then do you have the tenacity to make the best of your situation, and the tenacity that when you know that you've had maybe enough of being a stay-at-home mom and you need to go
mhm,
back.
mhm.
Um, and and so there's a lot.
There
There's a lot to unpack there. Like one of the things, being the president of the Moms Club, I did have a little president's corner that I would write my thoughts about. And Jamie, I don't know if you know this or not, but I almost got fired from being president of the Moms Club. Did
I
you know
remember
I
there being
almost
some drama. I remember there being drama, but that's you,
No,
Lynn.
no, no, no. Well, but no, I don't know if you knew why I almost got fired. So I'm gonna tell you why I almost got fired. So I changed the newsletter to be multiple pages with advertising, obviously, but I also changed the newsletter that every newsletter had a theme. And the first theme that I came out with was, "Am I going crazy? Like, am I going crazy? Have I lost my mind? Did I get a lobotomy? Like, we need to talk about, I'm tired of baby talk or talking to my children. I need some adults to talk to, and I need to keep my brain fresh. Like, let's start a book club. Let's start talking about like historical issues or something. I
Mhm,
feel like everything is all about my child, and I still am a woman, and I am still an adult, and I want some adult time." So that was the theme of a newsletter. But the one that almost got me fired because somebody from the club actually complained to the national chapter was my newsletter. And the theme of it was, I need to have more sex. And one of the reasons I was saying I need to have more sex is because at that time I wanted to have another child. And you can't have another child if you don't do it. So my president's corner was like, "Hey, I'm not doing it enough to have another child, and I need my husband to look at me like a woman and not the mother of his son." And so lots of women contributed to that newsletter. We called all around town to find like romantic nights, dinner places that you could go to, themes you could think of, ways to make yourself feel more sexy at the end of the day after you've done childcare. And that was a really important newsletter. So I get this call from the national chapter, and they said, "We received a complaint about the newsletter. Please fax it over." And I faxed it over, and then they called me back laughing, and they said, "We actually would like to submit this for the best newsletter because
Ah.
obviously, if we're all parents, we had to have done it once. So why can't we talk about it?" I didn't understand that.
Ugh,
Right?
yes, there's so much
Right?
yes,
Moms.
I agree. Yeah.
Moms.
So I wanna just wrap it up and just say, I talked a little bit about it in in my interview, and that was just, I don't regret that I altered my career. I wish that I had, had the foresight to consider, especially no one plans to get divorced, but, the reality is 50% of us do. So if you do decide to alter your career, have the conversation about what that's going to look like. I mean, I hate to say that, but have that conversation and be prepared because there is a motherhood penalty. 100% we pay it. I mean that's why, like I said, I'm committed, in my work of rewarding women for the or people for the life experience of contributing to a household. But I think, like what we always say when we wrap up these decisions, we don't really get do-overs. It's I wish I could go back and have more kids. I'd do it, in a heartbeat, which I know is crazy. Unlike you, I love babies. But I guess my do-over will hopefully one day be that I get to be a grandma. Um,
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
no regrets and no do-overs, right?
Yeah, and I think what's really important is that if you make the decision to be a stay-at-home parent, you need support. Don't sit in your house alone. We actually, when I was president of the Moms Club, we had a great VP of membership. And I told her that she was saving people's lives because postpartum is a thing, and isolation is a thing, and loneliness is a thing. Even though you're taking care of another human being, it can feel at times very lonely. And you also feel very vulnerable because you're not contributing to the household. So there's a little bit of a vulnerability there. So I think if you make the decision to stay at home, you need to join a group. There is the Moms Club. There is also MOPS, which meet at night rather than daytime. So those are some also, part-time working parents, and get that network around you. Also feed your brain and feed your relationship with your spouse. Make sure you still have those connections so that, as these little gremlins, I call it, I think young children, and when you're a stay-at-home parent, or when there's one of you that's a stay-at-home parent, is a very vulnerable time in a marriage. So make sure you really stay connected to your spouse, and eventually your career will go back there. I just want to put that out there that I'm very happy. Yes, I'm not the chief technology officer of any company, but I'm very happy that I was able to kind of get back to something fairly important in the technology world. And I really thank Sherry, the CTO, who really reinforced that decision, and did the unexpected. Told me with her sage advice that she wanted time back, and that I should really appreciate that time. So reach out to us on Decision Diaries if you're in the midst of deciding. Maybe you're pregnant right now and you're wondering, what does this look like? I mean, I will tell you honestly, I had a couple of days with my kids that if you would have offered me a job, I would have dropped them at the nearest daycare and walked in and worked for you like nobody's business. So there's good days and bad days. I hope if you're thinking about making a decision, please reach out to us.
Yeah,
We'll
thanks.
tell it
Great.
like it is.
Oh, well, yes, we will. Yep. Massage toys and all. All
Oh,
right.
one more thing about the massage toy I will tell you, Jamie. I have to say this. one of the ways that I knew whether some of the stay-at-home moms were people that could hang with me is I would ask them, "What do you do during nap time?"
Oh.
And if they were shocked by what I said I occasionally did during nap time, they didn't belong in my play group, JB. They just didn't have a
Whoa.
sense of humor.
Whoa. All right. Well, this is fun. Stay tuned for the next episode on deciding to sell sex toys.